Hey friends, welcome back for a new episode of Off the Cuff. This episode we're going to be looking at reviews from The Alamo. This movie, we're going to look at the critics' reviews first and then the audience reviews. Just as a reminder, this movie has a 29% critical score and a 46% audience score. So let's take a quick look and see what's going on. This one from Maddie Lucas from The Dispatch from Lexington, North Carolina. A big, lumbering, unwieldy epic that creaks and groans from speech to battle. I will say, I know a lot of times when I come on this podcast and talk about these movies, I defend it from the point of view of positivity. Although I am pretty honest with the how I feel about the movies, but I do try and not spin it, but say, hey, I mean, there's still these reasons to watch it. There are definitely some really annoying aspects of the Alamo when I was watching it. Um, it is definitely too long. It, it it's okay. So it opens up with Sam Houston, played by the wonderful Dennis Quaid, and basically him trying to raise the army of Texas, and they're like, "Oh, we kicked the Mexicans out, hooray!" and basically setting everything up. But honestly, the first call it 20 minutes of this movie could have been cut off. You could have basically started this movie from the scene where Colonel Travis is shown around the mission in the Alamo, and you wouldn't have really missed anything. There's some little stuff where it's like someone's got a divorce, and like, but it's nothing that couldn't have been done by um it's nothing that couldn't have been done as like dialogue to like build the character that way, or have like a conversation between like Davy Crockett and Colonel Travis and all that. I don't know. It's just it was long unnecessarily so, and a lot of it I think is they were trying to interweave the Sam Houston storyline into it and why he couldn't get people to the Alamo and all this other stuff. Um, and then sets up the battle at the end to show what happened against him in Santa Ana, which is fine, but it wasn't real. You didn't get. It should have been more focused on the Alamo for a movie, that's called The Alamo. So there's definitely some stuff that I wasn't a big fan of. Um, but that being said, there's still plenty of good stuff in this movie. This one from Kevin Carr, Fat Guys at the Movies. Something was missing from the film. It lacked punch. Yeah, that I think that's a pretty fair assessment. And that's 2.5 out of 5. I think because it was so bloated and adding all this other stuff, if you had taken out the Sam Houston elements of this movie and really just focused on the men that are defending the fort or defending the mission, I think you could have had not only a tighter movie, but you could have had a little bit more emotional impact. You know, especially knowing, spoilers, they all die, right? But really getting to know these people in the mission, I think you could have had a lot more emotional impact as you see them dying. And it's one of those ones where I could just envision it as like it's the last stand. It like I hate to bring this up as a comparison, but you think of like Rogue One, like Star Wars Rogue One, where you get to know these people, and then at the end of the movie, you just watch as each one of them is picked off one at a time. So you get like that gut punch, you get another gut punch, you get another gut punch. That's kind of how this movie needed to be, and it just didn't do it. This one from Nell Minow from Common Sense Media. Doesn't work despite Thornton's top performance. Yeah, and like I said in the review, I think Billy Bob Thornton's performance in this movie is absolutely stellar. I think he is the one carrying this film. on his back by himself, and we weirdly didn't get enough of him. Um, there was too again. It was just too bloated. You could have done this movie probably in about, let's see, this movie was a hair over 2 hours, like maybe 2 hours, 15 minutes, maybe a little longer. You could have probably done this movie in about an hour and 45, maybe a little less. And you could have had a tighter movie. You could have had the pacing be better. You could have had more emotional interactions and dialogue. I think there's just a lot of missed opportunity here. Again, even though I enjoyed a lot of aspects of it, it just took way too long to get into the movie. And then they kept putting stuff in it that really didn't need to be there. I think this movie really wanted to be, not be, but have Sam Houston in it. And if you wanted to do that, what could have been really cool if we had had the forethought to do it is you do kind of like Clint Eastwood did Flags of Our Fathers and Letters from Iwo Jima, and they're basically happening simultaneously. Although Flags of Our Fathers, the which is the American perspective, they do go back to the states and all this other stuff, everything going on, but you still have both sides of this battle, which is like the big selling point of that movie and or those movies, and the fact that he was like kind of directing them at the same time, which is super cool. Um, you could have had that, and even in that example, they share scenes like of the like there's scenes that are like the same from different perspectives, obviously given how the movie is filmed. I feel like this movie wanted to be really go more into the history because maybe some people know about the Alamo part, but they don't know about the whole about like Sam Houston's part in it. So what could have been cool if they had the budget and whatever is you do the Alamo and then you could do Sam Houston, like have a Sam Houston movie alongside it with like the same actors and all this other stuff. And then you really get the story of like General Sam Houston, like really wanting to get troops to the Alamo and all this other stuff. But then they obviously can't. So having two movies go side by side would have been really, really interesting. Instead, the Alamo movie just gets mucked down with too much of the Sam Houston stuff, kind of too much unnecessary stuff in it. Uh, a lot of the critics are saying a lot of the similar stuff. So why don't we go on over to the audience scores, and I'll try not to ramble too much. what if I think one of not my issues, but one of my things is like once I get going, I could really just get going. This review from Gerard S. 2-star. The Alamo lacked the script content to make all the characters work. Battles were decent, but there was a lot of emptiness that lacked meaning. Thornton on the fiddle was funny. I will say there was a couple scenes like with Billy Bob Thornton on the fiddle, like where he's playing for everybody. He looks kind of like Joaquin Phoenix's Joker for like 2 seconds, which isn't great. Um, but overall, I think Billy Bob Thornton is probably the best aspect of this movie. I'm not sure if it's the script that's the problem so much. Again, aside from adding the extra stuff with Sam Houston, I think the dialogue is actually pretty okay overall, um, especially between the main characters. I just wish there was more, and the movie really doesn't have enough focus to. Um, it just doesn't have enough focus. It was trying to span too much stuff, I think. Here's an interesting one. 4-star from Anonymous. I expected a quote unquote modern version of the battle, with the Texicans being the evil ones and the Mexicans being the heroes. I was mistaken. It was surprisingly good, great entertainment. Thornton's Crockett, best of all. Watch it and see. And just for perspective, this review is from October 12th, 2021. I think if the movie had been made now, it's entirely possible you get that version. I think, and I'm not. This isn't going on anything. I think this movie was in part made because of post 9/11, we were really looking towards American heroes at the time, in this case, Texas heroes. And so we made a movie about that. And that said, they show that these guys are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, um, with like drinking problems and being lacking a spine and like all this other stuff. So they weren't perfect heroes, but I think it was a movie. Again, I don't know for sure, but I my feeling with this movie is that it was born out of a wanting to show Americans what heroes we had in our history post 9/11, and that Americans can overcome any adversity. I think that is part of why this movie was made the way it was. Again, not entirely accurate, or I don't entirely know. If that's the case, that's just kind of the feeling I get. 3.5 star from Anonymous. This film helps us understand more about the Battle of the Alamo. While not as impactful nor memorable, it does give us more details about the factualities of the Texas Revolution. So, this is an interesting review because, kind of like talking about, I think from a couple of off the cuffs ago, when I had talked about biopic movies. I am not 100% sure I would watch this as a documentary style movie to say that, oh, this is actually how it happened. Um, I don't really have a problem watching a historical movie with the shade, with like the glass, like with the glasses. I don't have a problem watching a historical movie and saying, okay, this might not be 100% accurate. But again, I think for some people that can be a problem, um, because I don't know if this movie was 100% accurate in how the characters were, how they were portrayed, how Sam Houston was portrayed. Like, I don't know. I don't know if this is historically accurate. So it's always one of those things where you really want to be careful if you're watching a historical movie or if you're watching a biopic movie that you're not watching it as a documentary unless it is specifically as a documentary, because then obviously in a movie versus a documentary they're going to take liberties. All right, let's see if we can do one more here. This one from Anonymous 3 star. Not great, but a pretty good telling of the story. The acting was good, but the script could have been better. Not much audience investment in the characters. Yeah, and again, I think that comes back to the point I was talking about earlier, that there are too many characters. The movie jumps around a little too much. So it makes it hard to get invested, where this movie really just needed to focus on the Alamo itself and the people who were there. And it would have had a lot more emotional impact if we see these people and not necessarily have the broad picture of the Texas Revolution that's happening, um, with like Sam Houston and everything. I would have ditched that stuff. I would have ditched about the first 20 minutes. I would have ditched the Sam Houston stuff, and then the movie is probably sitting at an hour and 45 minutes, and we don't have some of the problems that we have, because I agree with this review. It's really hard to get investment in this movie with how much it bounces around and how much it tries to focus on everybody, and by doing so focuses on no one. All right, so that'll do it for this episode. Again, thank you all so much for watching. I just wanted to do a quick shout out of my Diamonds in the Rough, our Diamonds in the Rough over on Patreon. Just a couple of them right now, but if you want to go join them and support the channel either as a free or a paid member, link is in the description. I appreciate all members regardless of paying or not. So I appreciate you all so much for the love and support. Thank you all so much for watching, and I really hope I see you in the next one.